We have all heard of haunted places, but what about haunted objects? It seems that throughout history there are many tales of objects being haunted by ghosts, demons, or even have curses that are laid upon them. And while many people are scared of these objects, there are many skeptics out there that think that the objects are merely a figment of humans' imaginations or an elaborate hoax. This is Sinister Stories, and join me as we dive into the world of cursed and possessed objects. The Dybbuk box was a name created by Kevin Mannis to describe a wine cabinet that he was auctioning off on eBay. Mr. Mannis was a writer and a creative professional by trade, and he owned a small antiques and furnishing store in Portland, Oregon at the time. According to the description of the object on eBay, the object was very possessed and caused many paranormal activities around Mr. Mannis' home. Now, according to Mr. Mannis, he purchased the box back in 2001 at an estate sale. And according to the seller of the object, the box had belonged to the survivor of the Holocaust named Havale. Apparently, Havale was destined to die in the Holocaust, but she managed to escape into Spain, where she bought the box before immigrating to the USA. Now, Mr. Mannis later met up with the granddaughter of Havale, who actually told her the story of the box and where it came from, and Mr. Mannis felt bad, so he actually asked to give the box back to the family. The granddaughter, on the other hand, said no, and that they did not want the box at all. Apparently, the box had been kept in her grandmother's sewing room, where it was never opened because there was a Dybbuk inside. Now, a Dybbuk is a Jewish folklore spirit that wanders around and enters the body of a living person until it could be exorcised out. Now, these spirits are often known to possess objects or people, and they will stay inside this item until they finish their goal, whatever that may be, or until somebody helps them out where they can move on to the next life. Since Mannis knew he was going to keep the box instead of giving it back, he decided to open it and find out what was inside of it. And inside he found two 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair, a lock of black or brown hair, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, one dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Now, several people who owned the box also stated that they had weird paranormal encounters. Now, Mr. Mannis himself stated that he actually had really horrific nightmares that a lot of the people in his house also shared. He even decided to get rid of the box by giving it to his mother as a birthday present. Why anybody would do that, I have no idea, but she actually suffered a stroke the exact same day. Now, many owners of the box also claim that they smell cat urine or jasmine flowers, and that the nightmares they all have are of an old hag that comes with the box. Now, the latest owner of the box is Iosif Nitske, and I'm sorry if I butchered that, it's really hard to say, but he is a student at Truman University in Kirksville, Missouri, and he actually put the box to auction. According to him, the box caused the lights in his house to burn out on occasion and for his hair to fall out. Now, Mr. Nitske had a blog where he actually mentioned the box a lot and mentioned that he wanted to get rid of it. And a man called Jason Haxton, who was the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine, actually kept up with the blog and wanted to buy it off Mr. Nitske. So he did. And according to Mr. Haxton himself, he had a lot of strange problems that came with the box, like hives, coughing up blood, and welts from head to toe. Mr. Haxton was actually so disturbed by this that he took the box to Jewish religious leaders to try to contain the spirit inside and pretty much keep everyone safe from it. According to Mr. Haxton, him and the religious leaders succeeded in keeping the spirit inside the box, and he hid it away in a location where nobody could get to it. After a few years of keeping the box a secret, he actually donated the box to Zach Baggins, who is the host of Ghost Adventures and has a museum of his own. And the funny thing is that this box has had some mainstream relevance lately. Zach Baggins had a show inside of his museum with Post Malone, where Post Malone actually touched the box despite Zach's warnings. And it seemed that Post Malone's luck got really bad the days following. To start off, the rapper was involved in some kind of plane emergency where both of his tires of his private jet blew out at the runway. A few days after that, he actually had people break into his house with guns. Almost a week after that, he crashed his Rolls Royce with another car. Now, of course, this could all be a coincidence, but people think that it really is linked to him touching the box back in the show. Now, skeptics say that when somebody owns the box, they are constantly looking out for the bad things that is happening to them and blaming the box for it. These skeptics believe that everything this curse causes is purely coincidence and that people just like to blame something for their misfortunes, while others say that this is way too much coincidence for comfort and that the box is indeed possessed. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments below if you believe or don't believe, and let's move on to the next one. Now, we've all heard of Annabelle and Chucky, but have any of you ever heard of Okiku? Okiku is a Japanese doll with a somewhat disturbing story that accompanies it. So the story starts off in 1918, back when Japan's way of thinking was much different than now. Despite being the technological powerhouse that it is today, Japan back then was more based on things like fables, magic, and the supernatural. Now again, the story starts off in 1918 in a city called Sapporo in Japan. A 17-year-old named Ikichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister. Now Suzuki was in the army at the time, and he bought this because he wanted to show his sister how much he loved her and how much he missed her when he wasn't there. Now the doll is very traditional looking. It has a kimono on and black hair with some paint. The length of her hair was to her shoulders, and this is very important information for the future, and she had deep dark black eyes. When Suzuki got home, he gave the doll to Okiku, which was his little sister, and she loved the doll so much that it pretty much became her best friend. Now she spent every single waking moment with this doll. She took it everywhere, she slept with it, she hugged it, she played with it, and it was just pretty much an attachment to her. Now Okiku loved the doll so much that she actually wanted it to become a duplicate of herself, so she named the doll Okiku as well. But it seemed, however, that the good times were not to last. Almost exactly a year later, yellow fever had hit her town and Okiku's family. Unfortunately, Okiku was not able to survive the yellow fever, and she died at the tender age of 3, gasping for air while holding the doll. Now her family understood what this doll meant for Okiku, and they actually wanted to bury the doll with her as a part of kindness, and that way they can always be together. But the government, being as strict as they were back in the day, did not allow this. Now, since the family could not bury the doll with their daughter, they decided to put the doll on their family shrine. Now, in Japan, shrines are used to commemorate the dead and celebrate from passing human life into the afterlife. It's around this time, unfortunately, that the weird things started to occur with the doll. Now, to start off, in what is probably the most famous trait of the doll, is that it actually started to grow its hair. Like I mentioned earlier, the doll's hair was up to its shoulders, and at some point after the death of the little girl, her hair was actually down to her waist. Not only that, but the hair actually started to get things like split ends. Some of the hair was a different color, and a lot of it was very messy and unlike the hair that a doll normally has. The family even stated that at night they would actually dream of Okiku, and that when they woke up, the doll was right there beside them. Now, while the doll did start off with these very simple paranormal encounters, things started to get a bit more complicated. A few weeks after these events, the doll actually started to show very concerning signs of spiritual infestation. Things started to get more hardcore, like lights flickering on and off, bangings around the house, very strange noises, and even voices were heard of different people. And what the family noticed is that these paranormal events would actually occur more and more depending on how close they were to certain key dates. And these dates were things like Okiku's birthday or the day of her death. Now, over time, they didn't know what to do, so they took the doll to the town shaman and spiritual leaders, where everyone pretty much agreed that their daughter's soul was in fact trapped inside the doll. Now, a few years had passed, and it was around 1938 when the family decided that they wanted to relocate to a different district of the country. Now, by this time, the family was accustomed to Okiku's spirit, and they were actually quite fond of it. They thought it was a magical and unique opportunity to interact with the dead. And knowing that it was the soul of their daughter that was inside the doll, they were not scared or disturbed by any of the occurrences. But what they did fear, however, is that the way their daughter was able to interact with them was due to how close she was to her grave, and since they were moving, they did not want to take her with them. So instead of taking the doll with them and possibly losing all interaction with her, they went up to a local temple and see if they would take the doll for them, and they did. Now, by this time, everybody around that local area had heard of stories of the doll, so they kind of knew what it was. It was pretty much famous around that local area, so the temple gladly took it in and was even excited to be able to manage the doll. And after a few weeks or months of having the doll, the priest was actually able to confirm of all the paranormal events that came with it. And the main thing the priest wanted to confirm is that the hair of the doll did in fact grow, and it grew pretty fast. The priest actually wanted to get to the bottom of it, so he cut off hair and he sent it for scientific examination, where the hair was actually proven to be of a human child. Now the doll has been there for years now, and apparently they try to keep it happy by cutting her hair every so often. That way the doll is comfortable in the place that she is. As the years went on, however, the fame of the doll grew more and more exponentially, but so did the paranormal activity. According to the priest, she is now invading their dreams at night, which is something she's never done before, and even does this to people that are simply visiting the doll. Not only that, but her hair seems to be growing faster and wilder than ever before, which is something that they don't know how to deal with since they have to cut the doll's hair every few days. Now, one of the latest updates with the doll, and it is very spooky, is that apparently her mouth is opening very slowly, and if you look inside, you can actually see baby teeth growing out of the porcelain gums. Now, while others find comfort in the fact that they are taking care of the little girl's soul inside the doll, others fear that it could be something more demonic. But that's for you to decide. And let's move on to our last possessed object. Now our story starts off in 1702, and it's about Thomas Busby, who was apparently a thug and a thief who owned a bunch of criminal enterprises. Busby later married a woman named Elizabeth, who was the daughter of another crook who actually moved close to Busby. Since they were now both in close quarters and both did criminal activity, they decided to work together and open up a coin counterfeiting business amongst other criminal enterprises. Now Mr. Busby also owned an inn. Now people don't know if the inn was to launder money or not, but he actually had a good amount of business there. Now apparently one day Mr. Busby and his father-in-law got into an argument. Now people don't know what the argument was about. Some people claim it was about their business, other people claim it was about his father-in-law's daughter, which was Elizabeth, but they did fight about something, and they ended up in really bad terms. Later that night, Busby got drunk, and apparently he walked into his inn to find his father-in-law sitting in his favorite chair. Now, according to a local legend, Mr. Busby loved this chair, so much so that he sat in there every single day. And when he got there, he forcibly removed his father-in-law from the chair, and they started to argue again about who knows what. The argument was so heated, in fact, that even when his father-in-law went home, he grabbed a hammer, followed him home, and killed him that night. After killing his father-in-law, he actually tried to hide the body in the woods. It wasn't until a search party found him a few days later, and Mr. Busby was arrested at the inn. Now, it is this part of the story that seems to go into some kind of folklore. According to some, whenever the cops came to arrest Mr. Busby, he was sitting in his favorite chair, and as he took him to the police station, he cursed the chair and said that anybody who would sit in it would die. Others claim that while he was walking towards the police station, that is when he cursed the chair and not when he got up. After his arrest, he was actually charged with murder and was killed by a hanging. And according to people, the pub or the inn that he owned was actually haunted by his ghost. Now, according to local legend, the chair actually was cursed, and a lot of people died just for merely sitting in it. Apparently, it's up to 60 people overall. The chair's first victim was apparently a chimney sweep who sat in it in 1894 to have a drink. Apparently, he got so drunk that he didn't make it home and he slept on the side of the road, but his body was found in the morning hanging next to where Mr. Busby was hung. Now, the local law enforcement claimed his death a suicide. That is, until his friend was on his deathbed, where he confessed to murdering and robbing his friend. Now, during the Second World War, the inn actually became a popular drinking spot for airmen. Now, these airmen would dare each other to sit on the chair, and most of those who sat on the chair never made it back home from their missions. Now, a few years later in 1968, there was also two other airmen who dared each other to sit on the chair, and they both did. Instead of dying in war, however, whenever they took off, the car they were driving took a left turn and hit a tree where they both died almost instantly. In the 70s, apparently, the list of victims grew. The chair apparently killed a cleaning lady who was diagnosed with a brain tumor after knocking into the chair, a number of cyclists and motorcyclists who suffered fatal road accidents, a hitchhiker who was run over after having spent 2 nights at the pub, and a local man who died of a heart attack shortly after sitting in the condemned chair. There was also a very famous case of a group of builders having a drink at the pub, and they pretty much dared the youngest member of the group to sit in the chair. And whenever they got back to work, the man that sat on the chair fell through the roof and landed on the concrete below. Now, this was too much for the owner of the inn, and he decided to banish the chair to the cellar, that way no one else can sit on it. A few years later, a man from the brewery went into the cellar to deliver some items and decided to sit in the chair. He told the owner that the chair was far too comfortable to be left in the cellar, but when the delivery guy took off, his van crashed on the side of the road and he died instantly. The owner of the inn knew that the chair was far too dangerous even in storage for the people around him, so he donated it to the Thirsk Museum in 1978. Even at the museum, there was also a case where a group of teens actually sat in the chair thinking it as a joke. Apparently the teens were laughing and joking around as they sat in the chair, but when leaving the museum, their motorcycle crashed into a tree where both of them died. The owner of the museum then put the chair up high on the wall, that way no one can ever sit on it again, and hopefully save the lives of the people around it. Anyways guys, this is Sinister Stories, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave any comments below if you want me to cover any certain topics, and thank you all for watching. And make sure that next time you buy an item at a flea market, or on eBay, or even at an antique shop, that you know the full story behind it. Also guys, if you would like to donate to the channel to help us make videos a little bit faster, you can do so with the link in the description below. Now of course, you don't have to. If you can't, that's understandable. Your view is more than enough, and here at Sinister Stories, we thank you so much for spending your time with us. And at no time ever will you ever have to pay for any of our content, since it will always be free no matter what platform we are on. But if you would wish to donate, then we would really appreciate it. Until next time guys, stay safe.